Hi there, welcome to Flonigan Books. Welcome to my wrap-up for April. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. This video is going to be a reading wrap-up of the 9 books I read since my last wrap-up, which was done at the end of February. So this is 2 months worth of reading. I know there are plenty of people out there who read a lot more than I do, but I don't have that much time to read, and I'd rather read what I like and take it slowly than just trying to read as much as possible. That's not my game, but I do set a reading goal every year for 50 books, and this is the first time in like 5 years that I haven't fallen behind in like the first half of the year. So the first quarter of 2024 is going very well reading-wise, so let me talk to you about these books. Before I forget, I want to talk about the 2 audiobooks I read first. The first audiobook I listened to was by Tracy Borman, and this is Witches, A Tale of Scandal, Sorcery, and Seduction. So this was a non-fiction book about the history of witchcraft on the one hand, but at the same time it was talking about a very particular case where 3 women were accused of being witches in the 17th century in England. It delved into the history behind witchcraft and all like the social conditions in which it came to be and why people believe these things. So it was a very well done book, but I also felt that it kind of took away from the narrative. I sometimes, especially around 2/3 of the book, I felt a little lost whether we were talking about witchcraft in general, or whether we were still talking about the case, because she also roped in a lot of other cases and a lot of other trials to serve as examples, and I think that if you were to read it on the page, it would work a little bit better. But because I was listening to it, I sometimes lost track of what court case are we now talking about. So I wasn't always sure what the storyline, what the narrative was, and I found that a little bit more difficult to follow, but it was definitely an interesting read, which is why for me this was still a 3-star read. A 3-star read for me is, this is a good book, I like this enough, but it wasn't anything too mind-blowing. It was just a good, solid thing. If you're interested in witches, you might want to give it a listen as well. And then the second audiobook I listened to was 31 Bond Street. This is by Ellen Horan. I believe that's how her name is pronounced. And I listened to this as well as an audiobook, and this is a fiction novel, but it's based on something that really happened. So this is a historical fiction novel that focuses on the murder of Harvey Burdell. That's the name of the man who ends up being murdered. And this was a real case. So around the mid-19th century in New York, this was in all of the headlines, and the author made really good use of the historical facts to weave the story together. Here again, I gave it 3 stars because it was a really nice book for sure, but it was a little too simplistic in the end. It was very black and white between good and evil. And the second thing that I didn't like is the minute where the story sort of veers off of the historical material, because the case was never solved, so we don't know what exactly happened. And in the book, we get clues as to who might have done it. And that all wrapped up a bit too nicely in the end. So and the ending was also weirdly fast. There was this whole workup towards this case with flashbacks and all that. And then the last hour of this audiobook was all of a sudden everything was done and finished, and it was all neatly wrapped with a bow on top. And I don't love endings like that, so that's why this one, it was a 3-star read. The characters sometimes lacked a little bit of depth, I felt, as well. So it was enjoyable for sure. It was a very quick read. I listened to it in the morning before I headed out to work. And then I noticed yesterday that I had about an hour left, so I listened to it when I woke up and I was in bed. It's a great lazy Saturday morning to just listen to an audiobook for an hour or so. So that's what I ended up doing with this one. Enjoyable read for sure, but not overly successful. And the books I read overall were around the 3-star mark. So let me start with what I read first since I last talked to you. And I think this was a book I had already started reading when I did my last wrap up, but the first book I read in this section is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I definitely fell for the hype. I found this lying on a table in Waterstones when I was in London last year, picked it up because I heard so many people raving about it, and I felt very disappointed with it. This is about a, like, unprofessional sleuth kind of thing, so a young teenage girl who starts solving the murder of a boy who was, you know, murdered in her local town, and she gets wrapped up in everything because the murderer is still around, and she does this for a school project. I think that one of the reasons, like, I can understand the hype. If you've never read a lot of detective novels, then this can be a very enjoyable one. It's very fast-paced, it's a very easy read, the characters are plenty likable, it's a fun read from that perspective as well. I have just read much better detective novels in my lifetime. I just like other things when it comes to detective novels, and if it's too predictable and I already know what the ending is going to be, then I don't find it a very good one. So this one doesn't really put you on, like, the wrong foot or anything. It doesn't even try to. It's pretty straightforward in how the case is solved, and that's the reason why I ended up giving this 3 stars, right? Yeah, 3 stars, because I liked it. It was enjoyable. Again, like with the other books, a very enjoyable read for sure. But the 5 stars, I've been seeing people give this book on YouTube and Book Talk. I'm like, try reading some other things, because this is just not, it's just not that intricate, and there's no twists and there's no turns, and that's why I like reading detective novels, if there's twists and turns and morally gray characters, and I felt that this was a bit lacking. It's a little too easy. Next up is a book that is the only book that I gave more than 3 stars to in the entire 2 months, and it's Jim Butcher's Deathmasks. These are fast-paced, incredibly lovely book. This is part 4 or 5? I always forget what part I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is book 5 in the Dresden Files series, which is one of the longest running book series in the fantasy realm, you could say. I think there are like 20 books out in this series, so you can definitely keep going for a while. And there are a lot of people who dislike this because of how women are portrayed, and, like, people with, like, different backgrounds, and the main character is definitely unlikable. But I feel that that's the point. Like, the main character knows he's rude. And I just really like that. He has a skull in his basement that's like his computer / investigator that, like, leaves the house in the night to go figure things out for him. He gets involved with vampires, he gets involved with so many other things. This is just a really fun urban fantasy series, and I did enjoy Deathmasks as well. I remember, oh yeah, this was about him being challenged by vampires while at the same time trying to not piss everybody off in Chicago, because that's where this takes place. There's a religious element as well, because the Shroud of Turin is missing. So he's trying to locate that, and at the same time he's battling demons in the underworld. Like, it just has everything, and it just, like, these are, you know, beach reads for me. That's the way I see them. I very often read these in the summertime as well, to just have something quick and easy. And this was nice because after reading, because right before I read this one, The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I finished reading the second book in the Jade City? Yes. Jade City, the Greenbow Saga. And those books, as much as I enjoy them, they're very slow for me, and they're very sort of chunky and a lot to wrap my head around. So it's nice to have a palate cleanser like this to just have something fun in between. And that's definitely what this was. I think I read this in like 2 sittings. I mean, I fly through these, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the next one, because that's how I kind of do it with this series. I read one, and then I buy the next one. So I need to buy the next one in this series for sure, because I definitely want to keep it. Another much raved about book that I finally decided to read, it was a really short one. It's Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, and this is a book that so many people have been raving about how special it is. And because of the centaur at the front, I thought it was going to be like Greek mythology inspired, because it doesn't really say much on the back of the book of what's going on. However, this has a very important twist towards the end of the novel. And I think that if you don't see the twist coming, that it's a much more enjoyable read. But again, I predicted that something else might be going on within the first 2 chapters of this book. And this book is also pretty slow. I have also now heard plenty of people saying how they can get through this because it's quite descriptive at first, and it's about a man who's stuck in this, well, a cave system, a system of rooms that he never gets to leave, and he knows them very well, and he has documented all of them. And at first, we just really get him describing his day-to-day, which is very tedious because not much happens. Sometimes some of the rooms flood, but that's about as far as it goes. And there's definitely like a turning point around halfway through. But for a book that is only like close to 250 pages, not even, it's more like 240, to have to wait like 100 to 150 pages for the story to really get going, I think for a lot of people is a little bit too much. I still really liked it. I think it's very well written. It's very whimsical and ethereal in the way it's written. So I really enjoyed the writing style of it, which is why it's a 3-star read. But because of the predictability, I cannot give it anything higher than that. Because as much as I think it's a really innovative idea that's behind it and what's happening here, I also felt that we could have had more, you could say. So I wish it was a little bit longer, and I felt we could have explored more of the things that are happening when the twist starts to happen. But I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, if you like books with twists, this may be a nice one. And I did really enjoy it as well. But yeah, it's a bit tedious at first, just so you know. Then the disappointment of the past 2 months is this guy, The Atlas Complex by Olivie Blake. This is the 3rd and final book in the Atlas trilogy that she has been writing, and I didn't really love the first one, but I was invested enough with the characters that I wanted to keep reading the second novel, and I really enjoyed the second novel and everything we got there. And in this 3rd book, none of the characters are working together. They're all like in different places, so we get bits and pieces from a story from completely disjointed perspectives, and it never comes together. And that's why I gave it 2 stars. So in case you don't know what this series is about, we start the trilogy meeting a group of people who have been selected to join the Alexandrian Society, and they're called the Atlas Six because their caretaker is called Atlas Blakely. And there's all these mysterious things going on, and all these people have like certain powers, something magic abilities, you could say, and that's why they are selected. And at the end of the first novel, it becomes clear that they need to take a very important decision for their future, and they refuse to take that decision. And that's definitely sort of playing in the background here as well. But I just felt that this book was just lacking. It was the writing of this is so frustrating. Where with Piranesi, I love the writing, even though it can be tedious plot-wise. This doesn't even have a plot. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. And I just felt that I could read this by skipping a lot. So I ended up reading it quite quickly. But, you know, in these, like, longer pages, you can just read, like, the start and the ending of a paragraph, and you really don't need the information that's in between, because it's just another character thinking about completely irrelevant things. And what I found so frustrating with this book is that as I was reading it, like, you get a chapter and it says the name of the person whose perspective we're getting, but because it's a cast of like 6, and we even get additional characters in here who we haven't really heard from before, it was just too much. And then halfway through the chapter, it switches, like another person is added into the mix, and it felt very repetitive for that reason. And I felt that this book, I mean, it's a 500-page book, close to, it's like 475 pages. It could have been half if it was better edited. It just really, really suffers from bad editing, and it doesn't have a plot at all. Like, literally, the moment when things start to happen takes about 10 pages. I don't want to read a 500-page book just to get 10 pages that actually matter for the story. So this was definitely a disappointment, which is why it's 2 stars. And then if you watched my vlog from when I went to Valencia recently, you will have seen a little bit in the background that I was reading this. This is Coco Mellor's Cleopatra and Frankenstein, and this is about a pretty toxic relationship between a Frank and Cleo, and these are their nicknames for each other, and sort of like everybody in their vicinity and how they sort of influence those people, you could say. At least that's what the blurb says in the back. And I just felt that the fact that we got chapters from all of these other people that they know really made me not focus on them and their relationship. Like, it was just random, and it felt like random people who didn't have much to say at all to help the story along. So for me, again, this was a 3-star read. It was enjoyable. It's very much that sort of millennial Sally Rooney-esque kind of look at relationships where everybody's just a hot mess, and this happens to be like high society New York, which puts a different spin on things for sure, but everybody's just always in a drug-induced coma. And after 200 pages, I was just done. This book really dragged in the middle, I found. It gets a really, like, I really did like the ending of it. I liked the beginning and the end, but the middle third, I just wasn't that invested in the characters that we got a perspective from. So I liked it when the relationship came to be. I liked it when the relationship started to unravel as well. But it was just, because of all of the different POVs in this story, I really felt it took away from what could have been, you could say. I very often feel this way with POV stories, and I don't always look at how the book is set up before I decide to read it. Maybe I should, finally. But yeah, some POV doesn't always work, and I very often feel that it's a ploy by the author to get away with a lot of things, like to just meander into oblivion and not keep the plot focused. And that's how I felt with this as well. This could have been easily 50 pages shorter than it actually is. And then I finished reading that book as I was waiting for my plane at the airport, and then my plane was delayed. It was delayed even more, and it was just a whole hell of a plane ride back, you could say. But it did give me the opportunity to read the second book that I brought along. So as a backup, I had taken this with me. This is Herman Koch, Het Diner. I believe it's been translated into English. I'm going to have to look it up, and I'll pop it up on the screen or put it in the description box, because I know this does have an English translation. But this is a Dutch book. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try a Dutch book just for funsies, because a couple of years ago, I went out of my way to try and find all of the best Dutch books that my friends and family members had recommended to me, to dip my toes back into Dutch books and Dutch literature. And as I was reading this, I was like, this isn't literature, really. But it was a fun read for sure. So this is about two couples who go out to dinner, and their teenage sons have done something bad. We don't know yet what they've done for most of the book. And we get the entire story from the perspective of the main character, who is one of the dads in the story. And the other man is his brother, and then his sister-in-law and his wife. So we get a background into his relationship with his wife and his son, the relationship with his brother growing up, the relationship he has with his sister-in-law. So it's very much about like family and keeping things together and all of that. But as we're reading story, we start to know that this main character has a very short fuse for whatever reason. And that definitely comes into play into the story once we find out what the teenage sons have actually been doing and what they have been up to, and how the parents have come together to this dinner to discuss what these boys have done and what they're going to do about it. This was definitely the type of book where the twist worked for me. Not because I didn't see it coming, because I think there are little clues, but the way it came together in the end, I mean, I love unlikable characters, we all know that, and this is a story that does it really well. And I read this in between me finishing that first book and getting home. I finished the whole thing. That's how quick it reads. It's like 4.5 hours. I was just flying through this, page after page after page. I mean, there's not a lot of text on the page either, which in Dutch books sometimes I feel, because of the layouting in Dutch is different than it is in English. So I always struggle with that because I read so many English books and my brain always needs to get used to it. But with this, I dove straight in and I just kept reading, and I wanted to know what happened next after every single chapter. So this is a page turner for sure. A great like whodunit kind of story, but also with a twist of an unlikable character who doesn't always do the right thing, and I always love that kind of thing in my book. So this was definitely good. I did end up giving it 3 stars because I did feel that the writing made it the writing was a little bit lacking. I felt like if this had like the whimsical writing of the Piranesi, I would have liked it even better. But this is like a throwaway book. Like you read it once and it's great, but it's nothing memorable. It's fun, but it's nothing to really write home about. However, if you want to try a Dutch author, I would highly recommend. And the final book I read is this collection of short stories that I got as a freebie. Once a year here in the Netherlands, we have something they call Book Week, and my mom's birthday is also always around that time. So I always buy her a book for her birthday because she loves to read as well. And then they always give me one of these for free because you can get a free book with a purchase that you make during that week. So this is De Chabotte Gezinsverpakking. And this is a family who, the father has been a Dutch writer for years, and like, I don't know what he's done like theater, like really like this creative thing. And one of his sons has been an author for the past couple of years as well. He's released a couple of books as well. And this is about their family life, and each family member, including the dog, has a chapter that they've written, and the mom is like sprinkled in between to tie it all together, you could say. So it's very much about family, coming of age, life, getting older, and a couple of these chapters really hit home because a couple of the things they're going through, my family is going through or has gone through in the past. So it was very recognizable for me in that way, and that's why I enjoyed it. But you know, these books are always like, you know, little trinkets that you read in between, and it was a 3-star read for me for that reason, because not all of the stories were super interesting, I found. Like, as a couple of them, I was like, but there were a couple that were enjoyable for sure, so a 3-star read. And those are all of the books that I read in the past couple of months. I'm currently stuck in the last book from the Greenbone saga that I just mentioned, Jade Legacy. It's lying right there. I've only read about the first 100 pages, and this is a brick of a book. It's like 600 pages at least. So as I mentioned, it's a slow burner for me. I tend to only be able to read those books in like small segments. In the first book, there was really something like that catapulted me into the story, and then I was able to read like 300 pages at once. And I felt the second book did that as well, but it takes a good 200 pages to get there. And it's a lot of politics and a lot of people talking. So it's very character-driven rather than plot-driven, I feel. And I do feel it works really well. It also has a multiple POV, but it's a little bit more well done than other multiple POV stories that I've read in the past. So yeah, Jade Legacy is going to be the next read. I think that's going to take me a couple of weeks to read because it's so chunky. But because I have been reading so many other books, and because I'm really into my audiobook game at the minute, I know I can keep up with the reading challenge for sure in the next couple of weeks. And I do have another vacation coming up, so I'm going to take Jade Legacy with me, and then hopefully I can get some more miles into that book and hopefully finish it at the start of May. That's what I hope to be able to do. And then I want to take a break from reading series again and like go back and forth like I've done with these books for sure. And then I'm going to start a new series, and I think it's going to be Poppy War. But let me know in a comment down below if you know anything about my bookshelves, what series I would like, what you think I should start reading. In fact, the things on this shelf right here behind me, this book, these 2 shelves, and a shelf above are like the shelves with books that I haven't really read yet. So that's why I thought that maybe if you see these in the background, you're like, oh, you should really read that. So. that may be another thing, but my brain goes Poppy War. That's the thing I may want to read next, but let me know in a comment down below what you think I should do. Thank you so very much for joining me here today. I make one video a week over on this channel. On my first channel I make, which is makeup related, I do 4 videos a week, and I have a blog where I post daily as well. So I hope to catch you in one of those spaces, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care everybody, have a good day. Bye bye.